Hello and welcome back. So let's try and fix our error here. Now the problem is we can't see any errors properly on our page. As you can see here, even if I view the page source, I won't see any of this code because it's being retrieved via JavaScript. So what I need to do is go to the console to see what the problem is, because that's where we read our JavaScript from. Now it looks like there's no problem because the Ajax is being returned as normal. But if I go to my courses view page, where this is where I'm reading my data from, and there's this handle result function. So we're just going to do a console.log because I just want to see the result that is being returned from Ajax. That's because this data right here is being taken from Ajax and pasted here, okay, which means the original will be in the Ajax, and so I can read it properly without it trying to display as HTML. So I'll refresh this page again, and then I get this data. So if I click on this data, it's a little bit hard to read, but you can copy it to your text file and read it better that way. But there are warnings in here. There's warning, attempt to read. We're just trying to find the very first error that we see. Usually when you fix one error, it will fix the rest downstairs. So the first error here seems to be here, where there's warning, attempt to read property title on Boolean. Okay, so whenever you see this, it means the item you're trying to read is either true or false, okay, instead of it being an object. So this is where the problem is. So title is not here. Here we're trying to read title, but the item is a Boolean and not an object. So what this means is if we go to the course landing page here, okay, it's saying, let's go to title. Right here, it's saying raw is a Boolean. So I'm trying to read this property named title from a Boolean instead of an object. So this means this row did not return anything. It returned false, which means we couldn't find what we were looking for. So let's come back to the Ajax part, because this is where it seems things are a problem. So we have the ID. Now I want to know, first of all, if ID really is equal to something. So I'm going to echo the ID like so. Now it will be hard to know what I have echoed here, so I may use show so that it adds some extra data around the ID. That way I can see it more clearly. Let me go back to the console and let me refresh. Now knowing how to debug is very important, otherwise you have a problem. So you see, because it's the first item in the data, it's here. There's pre-tags and then there's a 2 there. So it means it's actually showing me the correct ID. So the ID is 2, and that's good. So we are getting the correct ID. So where is the problem? Okay, so there's ID. Now the query is here. So if ID is correct, then maybe the user ID is wrong. So let's try and echo out the user ID and see if that is correct as well. So I'm going to paste that. Let's come back here and let's refresh. So in here you see there's data, and then there's opening pre-tag and closing pre-tag, but there's no number in there. So that's where the problem is. The problem is that we don't have a user ID. That's where the issue is. But why is this? This is strange. So what I want to do is go back to this area here, the admin, while we are here. I want to know if at this point we have a proper user ID. So I'll copy this and then just do show right there and put user ID. Now this is going to break our JSON data, so it will show outside. So there it is. We have pre-tag 1. So there everything seems okay. We have information. It's just that when we try to run through here, we don't get the user ID. Now this could be that doing this, I don't know what's going on here. It seems like the session is being reset. I am not sure. So what I'll do is let me just show the session data just to see if there's anything inside the session at this point. Okay, so let's refresh again. All right, so there's a pre-tag and there's an array. So there's actually something in the, oh, no, it's an empty array because the pre-tag closes there. Okay, so this is where the problem is. So when we do this, when we run, this is something I didn't anticipate. When we run file get contents like this, we are creating a new session. So the session here that we knew about is no longer active. The one that we are logged in with, this one we are logged out. So that's where the problem is. So what we can do is we can put ID there. Let's put a second ID on the other side. So, or maybe what we can do is we always supply the user ID like that, and then comma, and then we put is equal to no, and then we also supply the ID over there. So yep, we supply both when trying to read data. Now I'm going to come back here, and right about here I will put user ID so that I can send it as well, since it's not part of the session anymore, and then concatenate, put a slash, and then I can put finally my ID like so. Then if I come back here, since user ID now is coming from here, I don't need to grab it from there. So now let's try this again. So close this and let's refresh. And now things are working as intended. As you can see, everything seems to work just fine. Alrighty then. Very cool. Now, it may look like everything is back to normal, but there's a slight problem. The problem is that when we are reading using file get contents and we are using the root path, which we are using the server, it's as good as somebody is actually typing this link in the browser itself and they are accessing that information. So what we don't want is for Google to index this page. We don't want it to know even that this page exists. Okay, somebody can know that it exists, but it shouldn't be a big deal. But if they try to access it directly, this is why we have this code here. It's just going to say direct script access denied. So whether they access it directly or not is not our problem. But, oh, actually, it will save the whole root path, so which means they'll be able to access it directly like that. Okay, so that is interesting. So what we can do to try and mitigate this issue, we don't want these pages indexed by Google. So what we can do is put what is known as a robots.txt file. So I'm just going to right click on my public folder and say new file. Okay. And in this new file, we're going to put some code. Now I just paste this here. So this is how we do it. So capital U, user dash agent, full colon, and then put your star there after the space. Now, if you know the bot you are targeting, especially if you're targeting Google bot, you can type its name here. I don't remember the Google bot name, but you can find that out and type it here. Or you can just Google how to make a robots.txt file. And then you tell it to disallow, which means you are asking the crawler from Google to avoid any paths that have admin in them, because we don't want the admin section to be indexed, because that's of no use to anyone. So save this file as robots.txt, okay, and save it in the public file. So we don't want the admin section indexed, neither do we want the Ajax part indexed either. It's of no interest to anyone. Okay, great. So let's come back here and cool. So that solves our problem and everything else. So the rest of this now is we need to make the uploader for the image and the uploader for the video, and then we can save. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.